Okay.
If you love me, won't you say something? If you love me, won't you? Won't you? Love me, won't you say something? If you love me, won't you? Love me, won't you? If you love me, won't you say something? If you love me, won't you? Won't you? Love me, won't you say something? If you love me, won't you? Love me, won't you?
What is up, guys? Welcome to Making Moves with Mikey. I'm your host, Mikey Messina. I hope everyone has been well. If you are new to this channel or new to the podcast, I'd like to say welcome. And if you have been supporting this podcast, I would like to just say thank you. For today's guest, I have a great friend of mine. He goes by the name of Christian Vallido. CV is what he goes by, actually.
What up?
What's up, CV? He's an associate marriage and family therapist, and he's actually a few hours shy from his licensure. He was born and raised in San Diego. He received his master's from the University of San Diego and his bachelor's from San Diego State University. Currently, he's providing therapy for individuals, couples, and families at UCSD. What's up, CV?
What up, man? Good to see you, man.
Good to see you. Thank you so much for hopping on this podcast. And a funny story, CV and I actually reconnected through cycling, and we grew up together in the dance community here in San Diego. We dance on the same dance teams for quite some time, and we adulted and ended up doing our adult things, and here we are.
Yeah.
How's everything been?
Everything's been good, man. I mean, I see the light at the end of the tunnel with this whole pandemic thing. And just kind of getting ready to, I guess, embrace that part while still trying to take all the good takeaways from being in the pandemic, and in quarantining. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of things just trending in the right direction. So that's good.
Yeah, man.
In terms of what I typically do with my guests, CV, I actually asked them how they were able to make moves for themselves. And it can be something that you did maybe this morning, yesterday, or earlier this week, something small or even something large for yourself. So with that being said, how'd you make moves for yourself?
I'll probably think back to just, we have like a monthly work meeting with all my staff. And so without getting too technical, I guess the ability to like share clinical notes with patients, which is something that we try to protect. I was actually able to just find kind of way to set that default to not share. Was well received by everyone. Got a lot of good feedback about that, I guess.
Nice.
So that was cool. Just, I don't know, being, I guess, some sort of the tech guy. And also just making time to work out a little bit more. So like even before this, I made time to jump on the bike trainer for a little bit and just to kind of calm any nerves I'll have about even being here,
Yeah, for sure. I still get nervous till this day, just jumping on and having normal conversation, right? I had to like real quick 10-minute meditation session right before we jumped on, and you're my guy, like we talk all the time. It's just different when we're shooting it for a podcast or whatever it is. But
Yeah, because I'm sure we've had similar conversations with two wheels between our legs on bikes, and
right.
But now we're recording it, and yeah.
Which leads to the theme of today and having you as my guest. We're going to be talking about two things. First thing is how to deal with anxiety. And second is managing stress, something that you are a professional with. Before that, though, CV, just talk a little bit about yourself. What got you into this line of work?
Got my bachelor's in sociology. Like most people in that field, don't find a job right away. So I worked at Tapioca Express for a little bit. And then I switched over to becoming a preschool teacher, which is where I met my wife. But then I guess there was a point there where it's like, okay, I think I'm over this. I need to look into the next thing. And so initially what I was looking at was social work, actually. But it was after talking to a mentor where she put me on to, well, you should go look at being an MFT as well. And so when I was ready for grad school, I applied for social work and MFT at the same time. Got denied for social work, so ended up becoming an MFT by default. But I guess, it's kind of that saying about like opportunities, with one door closed, another one opens. And I really can't imagine myself doing anything else than what I'm doing now.
That's awesome. And right now you are a therapist, family therapist, couples therapist, even for individuals. How long have you been a therapist?
I want to say I graduated 2 years ago. So I guess officially associate for 2 years, but we have an intern year, so technically 3 years. How long have I been doing it? So yeah.
Nice. So first question for our topic today is anxiety. Like, what is anxiety?
Well, I guess first off, I want to say that anxiety is not necessarily bad. You know, anxiety is what gets you to kind of focus on your problems and try to like maybe figure out a solution. It's that point though where if you let your anxiety kind of be overwhelming or grow too much or think about ruminate on it too much, it becomes problematic, you know?
Right. I looked up the dictionary definition of anxiety, and it seems negative, right? It's a feeling of worry, nervousness, or unease, typically about an imminent event or something with an uncertain outcome. A nervous disorder characterized by a state of excessive uneasiness and apprehension, typically with compulsive behavior or panic attacks. That in itself, just reading it is like, I never want to get that, right?
Yeah.
But you say that there's like a positive, not necessarily positive, it's not always negative. So expand on that a little bit more.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you think about, like, imagine yourself being a deer, right? You see some headlights coming your way. If you never got anxious or to the point where we'll talk about later or stressed out, you wouldn't think to like move either left or right. You would just kind of get stuck and paralyzed, which is what happens to a lot of people. You know, their anxiety kind of has them be paralyzed and they're unable to do what they want to do. But it's actually because of anxiety as well that it gets you to move and do something helpful for yourself, such as continue to live. In this case, the example with the deer.
Yeah. Oh man, that's a good way to think about it. And I guess everybody has anxiety, and I've had it ever since I was a child, but I've never been cognizant to it until my adult years. And that's like the last maybe 2-3 years of my life where, hey, you're getting anxious. Like I'm telling myself that I'm getting anxious, right?
Yeah.
So leading into that, how is anxiety really identified and what symptoms come with it?
So I think you alluded to some of them earlier, you know, uncontrollable worry, excessive nervousness, sleep problems is probably a big one, muscle tension, especially like in your neck and shoulders, because that's where we kind of like hold our stress. Poor concentration, probably because you're so focused on like what it is you're anxious about that you can't really concentrate on anything else that you're supposed to do. Increased heart rate, stomach issues actually as well. And then kind of like avoidance and fear.
Yeah, I connect a lot with the sweating. Like I'm sweating right now. As you were speaking, I'm like trying to crack my neck here.
Yeah.
But you know, I'm feeling it right now. Like, you know, I'm anxious about just doing a podcast episode and the nervousness that comes with it, right? It's not that it's uneasy for me. It's just every time I get to do this, it's fulfilling, but at the same time, it fills me up with nervousness, right?
Yeah.
It's fulfilling with nervousness. So
yeah,
no, everything you got and everything that you had explained is definitely a symptom that I feel myself. So how exactly do you deal with anxiety, or how do you help it?
Well, I guess there's a couple ways, but I think the first thing that you want to at least think about before anything is that the goal should really be to manage anxiety rather than just like eliminate it entirely. You know, like you kind of said, anxiety and stress itself too is a part of life. You know, if it occurs in, again, like if it occurs in low levels, you know, it's fine. It doesn't bother you. You experience it, you can manage it, and then you kind of go about what you want to do. Think about like those butterflies you get before performing on stage, you know, or even nervousness with taking a test, or that anxiety of if you're about to almost rear end a car, you know, you kind of have that quick, intense feeling of anxiety, sweating, heart rate racing, but then the moment passes and it kind of goes on. So again, anxiety happens throughout our lives, and the goal should be to manage it rather than eliminate it. And so one of the ways that I like to introduce to my patients is actually this idea that we need to kind of shift our thoughts away from the anxiety specifically, so that you can even take a step back and try to think more clearly about what you should do, which is what we call, I guess, like a grounding technique or anchoring. So when you are anxious and or stressed, you'll probably find your thoughts kind of like running around up here. You're not in a state where you can think as clearly as you probably could. Right. And so what you need to do is ground yourself first, and then you can do things like maybe think about relaxation, think about self-care, think about challenging these thoughts. But again, first things first is grounding. And so what I want to do with you right now is we're going to play a little bit of a game.
Okay.
The game itself is called categories. So we pick a category and we'll take turns going through the alphabet, kind of listing animals.
I'm already feeling anxious.
Okay.
Animal, The first thing that came to my mind, I'm like, elephant. He better not say elephant.
Yeah. But we're gonna take turns though. Okay, so Mikey, what's an animal that starts with the letter A?
Alligator.
Okay, go with B for bear.
Okay. Cat.
Dog.
Elephant.
Okay. Flamingo.
Giraffe.
Hippopotamus.
This is going to be a difficult one. I don't know one with an I.
Keep thinking about it though. Just a little bit more. Okay, but that's the point of the exercise right there though, is you want to get yourself stuck, because as you're thinking about an animal that starts with the letter I, are you able to think about anything else?
No.
No. And so at least at that point, you realize you're not thinking about what's making you anxious anymore. And so you have at least that much space to kind of think about, okay, is it helpful for me to keep thinking about it in this way? Or should I think about maybe relaxing or do something else to come back to it? Or should I work on challenging it? And then for I, I'll always go with like iguana or impala, kind of like the car.
Oh, man. Yeah, see, you just got me stuck at that point.
Yeah, but I mean, I do this a lot, so I get pretty good with animals. So other categories, you want to probably use is like, thinking about brands, food items, Marvel characters or comic book characters, or if it's with my wife, we usually do Disney characters because we're all about that. So, just kind of going through different categories as well to kind of help you, again, just ground yourself. It's not aimed at solving the problem, but just giving you the opportunity to do something else about it.
Yeah.
And I guess it's kind of the idea of picturing in your head an elephant, right? Trunks, ears, maybe tusks, the leathery kind of color of its skin. And then if I tell you to not think about an elephant, are you able to do that?
I'm still thinking about the elephant.
Right. Yeah. So again, you can't tell yourself to stop thinking about your anxiety, stop thinking about your anxieties, stop thinking about your anxiety. But more it's like, you got to kind of work on replacing that thought. Something like using these categories, or what I call the ABC game, is one way to kind of at least get yourself grounded to do so.
Right.
Yeah, if you are anxious, you're probably like up here where it's like not manageable. But then doing those things kind of brings you down here where you're like a little bit more better equipped to handle whatever it is that's making you anxious. And also recognizing too that physiologically, it takes a little bit of time for like those feelings in your body to like calm down. So taking a time out or a break, especially when it comes to like couple stuff, is a really good idea, just because, again, physiologically, you're probably still feeling those symptoms of anxiety.
No, absolutely. So would you say that one of the first steps to even identifying it is awareness?
Definitely. And for each individual, it's kind of like different, right? Like how each person kind of experiences anxiety is kind of different, or like cluing into their signs, their warning signs.
As a child growing up, our parents were always teaching us to get over it, suck it up, right? If you're crying about something, like get over it, And nowadays, we don't live in that method, right? We're more mentally aware of what's going on, which causes you to be in your thoughts a lot and think.
Yeah.
But as a kid, it was like that fight or flight moment where your parents are like, well, get over it or, fight it, right?
Yeah.
But there were no tools behind what that looked like. It was just very black and white. So
and like figure it out for yourself.
Yeah. So when it comes to maybe a friend or a loved one or a family member that has anxiety, how do you best support that person or those people?
When I think about it for, like my close ones, my loved ones who are like going through it, it's a matter of just trying to remind them to keep things in perspective, as well as, maybe doing something like that ABC game with them, and so this isn't fair for most people just because like I'm in the field, so I like know these things in my back pocket. But I mean, pretty easily though, you can use some strategies to kind of help them kind of like at least work through the anxiety or thoughts. I think a couple easy ones are doing what we call kind of like worry exploration. So that's where you would just ask that person, okay, the thing they're anxious about, tell me the worst case scenario, then tell me the best case scenario, and then tell me the likely case scenario. And so in our heads, in order to protect ourselves, actually, we'll probably just jump to the worst case scenario, like what
Right.
if this goes terribly wrong? But then it is a little bit helpful to think about also, what if things go absolutely right? And then also, what if it's just kind of like, okay, like where can you kind of meet in the middle? For the most part, when you're kind of looking at the middle, you'll find that things at least remain neutral.
Mm-hmm.
Things don't get worse, things get bad, or things are bad for a little bit, but they eventually kind of fizzle out and you're okay. So
Mm-hmm.
you come back to this kind of like state of neutral. And so in just using this worst case, best case, likely case,
Mm-hmm.
asking a loved one, okay, let's say it's a job interview, right? So they're worried about it. What's the worst case scenario of doing this job interview?
Mm-hmm.
And so what would you, if you were that person who was anxious about it, what would you kind of say?
They might not like me. I might not have the right responses for the interview, or I might not just be what they're looking for. I'm
Yeah,
I'm
right.
al- I'm always thinking of like the negative of the situation too. Just in
Yeah.
my line of work and whatever it is, I'm always weighing out, okay, what's good, what's bad. But that in between isn't necessarily where I really think of where to go.
Yeah. And so as we kind of do this exercise a little bit more, right? What's the best case scenario of this job interview?
They absolutely love me. They hire me on the spot. Everything was spot on in terms of how I presented each answer. And yeah,
Okay. Okay. Now, what do you think is that like middle ground between, you bombed it and you got hired on the spot? What do you think is like the middle ground there?
the waiting game,
Okay.
the unknown,
Yeah.
which I
Yeah.
find myself in a lot, because it's you don't know if you did well, you don't know if you did bad. You're living in the unknown where it's just a waiting game.
Yeah. You're waiting to hear if you even hear back or not, and don't really get that feedback of if you do well. But I guess some takeaways from the interview, right, is that while you're waiting, you at least recognize that you had some practice on kind of like selling yourself, you know, and kind of have a better idea of, what can you take away from this in the future, I guess.
I have this conversation with my wife a lot, and it's you thinking back at what you could have done better, but having that conversation to better yourself for that next opportunity. Because I'm a strong believer in that the right opportunity will come at the right time, but
Yeah.
you also have to be prepared for it and give that 150% in order for you to get that outcome back. I think that question also expands on a plethora of things when it comes to just the preparation and your post outcome. In between though, to answer your question, it really is what I take from it to be better for the next opportunity that comes around.
I want to say it's Chance the Rapper, how can you turn your L's into lessons? Or maybe
Mhm.
it's J. Cole. But still, I mean, even though it's very kind of like a hip hop phrase, right? But
Yeah,
it definitely applies to what you want to put into your life now, How can you
right.
turn your losses into lessons and kind of grow from there? What's something, without putting into too much detail, what's something else that you've been kind of like anxious about?
Man, this whole injury, the bike accident that I experienced in February, just anxious about when I'm going to get mobility back in my leg and when I'm going to be able to go back to work, when I'm going to be able to just go up and down a flight of stairs without tweaking something. There's just so much that's built up around it. But
Yeah.
that's definitely something that's been weighing heavy on me the last month and a half, almost two.
Okay. Okay. So let's do this exercise with this kind of thing, Worst case scenario for you,
Worst case scenario, I lose my job.
because you
I
can't go
lose
back, right?
because I can't go
Yeah.
back, and I end up having to stay out a lot longer than expected.
Okay. Probably got to sell your bike to me. Since you won't be using it.
Bummer,
Uh,
bummer.
What's the best case scenario?
Best case scenario is that I heal a lot faster than what my physical therapist is projecting, and I cut the time in half or even less than that with what they projected for me.
Okay. And then what's probably like the middle ground and like the likely case scenario for you?
The middle ground is what I'm living right now. So it's exercising, taking the time to not beat myself up about everything that went on, and trying to stay positive, even though there's a lot of things kind of working against me. But I want to say that's the middle ground.
Yeah, or as simple as like, like kind of like trusting the process of like healing,
Right.
recognizing that these things kind of take time, and we're not the LeBron James or Kobe Bryant's where we can repair ACL within like
Yeah.
a season,
Oh gosh. Exactly. That's the biggest thing. I need to definitely put things into that perspective. And I think our listeners or people watching this right now may not have known about that middle ground. Cause
Yeah,
I'll tell you what, growing up, I always was introduced to, hey, this is the bad thing. This is the negative thing. If you do that, this is going to happen to you. Right. So it scares you. It fills
yeah.
you up with anxiety in a sense. So finding ways to be aware of it, accept it, and then utilizing useful tools to get you past it is what's really going to help.
Some things that you don't want to do is just like that, like our parents told us, right? Like just get over it. Like that's what we don't want to do. We want to be able to kind of be there for them and support them. And like it's helpful to ask, like, how can I best support you right now?
Yeah.
Just as simple as that question. They might not know the answer, they might be processing, but I mean, at least giving them that space to kind of like at least say that. And then if they need help with like, some coaching of challenging the thoughts, try that. Or if they just need some grounding, do the game with them, or just kind of like walk through some deep breathing exercises with them.
So to wrap it up with anxiety, CV and I were just talking about different ways to be aware of it, different tools to help you understand it, help other friends and family get through it best. To just cap it off, what would be like a good 1 to 3 steps that you would give someone that is going through anxiety or feels anxiety?
Yeah. All right. So if we do 3 steps, right? First one is going to be do some grounding, because again, you're not going to be able to think as clearly if you're like up here. Second step is to take some deep breaths. There's a bunch of breathing techniques, one like 4-7-8, where you inhale for 4, hold for 7, and exhale for 8. If you do that, you have to kind of really be present in like what you're doing. So it also creates more space between like you and your anxious thought. And then also through those exhaling breaths is where your body recognizes that you're trying to relax.
Mm-hmm.
And then another quick one that we haven't talked about yet, I guess just focusing on what is inside your control and outside your control,
Mm-hmm.
And so once you look at a situation and realize what is inside your control, you kind of are better able to let go of things that are outside your control and, think about more what you can do.
Right.
Quick example, and one I've been doing a lot with a lot of patients just in the last year, but it's just like you're going to the grocery store, pick up some essentials. And so first off, what is outside your control with going to the grocery store?
Lines.
Okay, lines, busyness, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of that lately, especially during this time, but not having your items that you're looking for.
What's in stock? Yeah. Especially that toilet paper I got a big deal before. What else is outside your control?
Them being closed.
Yeah. Their hours of operation, not in your control. What about along the lines of like COVID, I guess? What's outside your control with going to the grocery store with COVID in mind?
I want to say the lines play a big role to that, kind of keeping your distance.
Yeah.
And not allowing so many people in one area at one time. You can't control that. That's just their rules or policy that they're following at the moment.
Yeah.
And yeah, just all the different safety protocols that is out of your hands that you kind of have to abide by.
Well, yeah. And so I guess the ones that I wanted to like highlight here is like, outside of your control is you have no control over how people manage COVID, whether they're gonna manage their social distancing or wear protective equipment, such as a mask or face shield. So then you flip that to what is inside your control. So a couple things, right? You can kind of choose like when you go to the grocery store. Google Maps has this thing where it kind of tells you how busy it is, either historically or right now. So you can kind of look like, okay, historically it's not this busy at this time, so I should try to go then. But then 2, manage social distance on yourself. So if someone's coming too close, you do have the option to kind of like step back. It might be inconvenient just because you're, dodging all these people. But still, that's an option to you. And then also you can also, wear your face mask, wear your face shield if that's what you want.
Or
and
keep
then
your butt home and just order online.
That too, or also even like, when you have the option to get the shot too.
Yeah.
Choosing to get the shot, So again, focusing on things that are inside your control because we really can't control other people. And so using that to kind of also help manage your anxiety in that way. If we apply even that thinking back to your healing, right? What is outside your control with your healing?
Oh man, the doctors getting back to me and letting me know when my next appointment is and everything that has to come with just the physical therapy aspect, which I don't already know.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, for
And then
sure.
also, I would add maybe also the rate at which your body heals.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like I mean, there's things you can do to help it, which is what's
Hmm.
inside your control. But I mean, like even then, no matter what you do, you still have to kind of like wait and let your body do its thing.
Yep. Has its
You
own
know,
process.
yeah. And so inside your control is like attending these appointments with your
Hmm.
doctors,
Hmm.
doing the PT, doing the exercise, and kind of just managing even like your thoughts with how you're feeling about it as well. Because
Hmm.
that's another important point too, is like, you can kind of control or you have power to control your reaction to like negative things that are happening, such as your accident.
Right. Right. No,
So
absolutely.
again, focus real quickly, right? Grounding, breathing, and then inside and outside your control.
Right. Nice. One, two, three, right there. With anxiety, CV, it really has a heightened, unfortunate connection to stress, which is our second topic, right? And it's managing stress. Other than anxiety that you can think of, at least when it comes to your line of work, what other things causes stress?
If your stress kind of goes unchecked, it can really lead to like high blood pressure, heart disease, even skin disease, like when people say they break out when they're really stressed out, as well as like depression, poor diet and exercise can happen just because if you are stressed out, maybe you'd rather go get that burger rather than that salad that you have at home. Or, you
Mhm.
think about skipping the gym, as well as like weakened immune system and sleep issues. I think about anytime like finals came around, my body was kind of like stressed up and stressed out and trying to like prevent myself from getting sick. But then
Yeah.
as soon as I was done, like the next day, without fail, I would kind of get like a cold just because my body knows to kind of like relax. And so looking at how even stress affects your like immune system as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. What typically causes stress?
Well, I think just like anxiety, right? Stress can be a good thing as well.
Hmm.
Again, puts that focus where you need to. If you think about even just working out, right?
Hmm.
What you're doing to your muscles when you're like bench pressing is stressing out your muscles so that they can grow. You do it at a reasonable rate and let it kind of heal, you'll see some gains. So it's really, yeah, that stress that can be helpful, but again, if it gets out of hand, that's where it becomes debilitating, and you start to
Hmm.
like neglect yourself a lot of the time or your
Hmm.
needs.
What in your expertise are good de-stressors?
So for each person, that's going to be different, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
But I think in general, though, you want to think about how can you be, well, there's this acronym that we use in therapy for self-care.
Hmm.
And so a lot of it is just different ways you can use self-care to kind of help you de-stress. It's called grapes.
Okay.
So like, I got purple, I got grapes.
Yeah.
So like the fruit.
Yeah.
And so the first one is like, G, just kind of being gentle to yourself, thinking
Okay.
about where can you give yourself a break? Where can you acknowledge that you're struggling, that you maybe need help?
Hmm.
You know, how can you go easy on yourself? The next one is R for relaxation. So ways that you can relax, whether that is doing some deep breathing,
Hmm.
getting a massage, or just reading a book even.
Right.
The next one is A for accomplishments. And so that's just recognizing your wins, no matter how small or how big.
Hmm.
So if you think about your PT, think about just like how far you're able to kind of be mobile now versus when you started out. And then for a lot of people, it could be waking up on their first alarm or I took a shower today. Like those things, like recognizing those small wins as well as big ones too, like your
Hmm.
accomplishments, like how are you different now between like 3 months ago or a year ago or a couple of years ago, like, so again, recognizing your wins wherever you can.
Hmm.
The next one is P for pleasurable activities. So things that
Hmm.
you enjoy. That could be for us, that could be biking.
Right.
For a lot of people, it's like video games, music. I like to actually think about food a lot as something pleasurable. So
Hmm.
even though the world kind of shifted away from dining in, how can we still experience the enjoyment of trying new food? Even if you go to the same restaurant, trying some new item that you've never really tried before. And then E is no surprise, is exercise.
Hmm.
So how can you get your body moving, get your body going? Doesn't have to necessarily be a full-on workout too, but just even ways that you can intentionally be active. And so what I think about is how can you count cleaning the house as exercise? Or if you are going to like Walmart or Target, intentionally parking farther away just so you can get those steps, or permitting yourself to take the elevator up, but then let yourself take the stairs down. So again, just ways you can intentionally be more active. And then the last one for this acronym is S for social. Probably one of the things that a lot of people do when they're either anxious or depressed or stressed is this tendency to like isolate, whether they feel like they don't want to talk to anyone because it'll be a burden, or whether they, I guess, want to like hide it and so not really share. When we say being social, it doesn't necessarily mean go out there and talk about your problems to everyone, which would be good, but also this idea that just being connected to the world. How are you continually like trying to stay connected to friends, close ones, or even just checking in on how like, you know, your barista or cashier is doing. Think about also like social media, like how can you actually engage in that with the people that you're like following versus just following like celebrities or brands. Like how can you get meaningful social interactions out of using social media? To put it plainly though, self-care is probably one of the best ways to kind of like manage stress. And again, it'll look different for everyone, but using something like grapes, which you can easily like Google grape self-care, and it'll give you probably a pretty good like website or PDF to help kind of explain that.
Yeah. And I think at least what I feel would be supplemental to that acronym also is to engage in meaningful actions that come with all of that, right? Because
Yeah.
there's the materialistic things that we hold on to, but at the same time, is it really adding value? And that's the biggest thing too, is what exactly is adding value to you? Is there adding value with continuing an argument, or is there adding value with, you know, just holding a grudge? Like, or is there adding value with buying a new item when you're probably just going to use it once a month, right? So it comes with a lot of the meaningfulness and the value in what you do in that acronym, I think is going to be real important as well.
Yeah. So I mean, even yeah, I guess intention is like, you know, the word that comes to mind.
Right.
Even if you're just intentional that like I'm doing this for my self-care, that kind of puts this idea that you're putting yourself first and you kind of like deserve this time. I feel for most people when they are stressed out, self-care is probably going to be the first thing that kind of goes out the door. Being intentional that like, you know, well, like I am stressed out and so I like actually need to uphold these habits, whether small or big, just for the sake of like, you know, putting myself first to better manage these situations.
Yeah. So when it comes to that, because I do that a lot, where if I'm stressed, I'm like, oh, whatever. I'm just trying to fix everything else, but not thinking about me. In that specific moment, what would you recommend?
I guess the first thing I would recommend is like recognize the stress.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Be aware,
uh,
like anxiety, right?
yeah, be aware of it, and then also, so then from there you want to think about, okay, I am stressed out. Do I have, I guess, the time or space to manage my stress a little bit before I continue to handle my problems, or will I have to plan for it later? So again, first step is just even recognizing that you're stressed out, so that you can think about how can you, I guess, better manage that in the future.
Yeah, I think what comes with it too, and at least I'm just speaking for myself as a challenge, right? Is accepting the thing that is actually stressing me out. Let me just bring up myself and my injury. It's accepting the fact that I can't get on a bike right away, nor go back to work. Like it's hard for me to accept that, which builds up anxiety, builds up the stress, and kind of has me on this emotional roller coaster because it's affecting me, right? I just want to be 100%. I want to be back to normal. That's what I'm constantly battling nowadays. So,
Okay, well,
in that specific situation.
let me introduce this equation to you then.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's this idea that pain plus resistance equals suffering. This resistance to the pain, like literally like your recovery, right? This
Right.
feeling bad that you're not at work, that you can't go on your bike, that's all adding to the pain that you're already dealing with.
Yeah.
So that's what leads to like suffering. If you can at least acknowledge that this is going to be stressful before going into it, it at least helps with the acceptance that like, okay, this is gonna suck, but I'll get through it. I think about for me, like just going to the dentist, you know, something we all should be doing at least twice a year. Um, if I go in there knowing like, okay, this is gonna make me a little bit anxious, but I've done this so many times, I'll be able to get through it. So if you're able to at least acknowledge that it's gonna bring those emotions for you, kind of makes it that much more easier to, I guess, resist with those emotions.
It's like that analogy that I think of when you say that, where boxers, for example, right? Or just fighters fighters always say that the hits that they don't see coming are the ones that hurt the most.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you anticipate that you're going into a fight and you're at least accepting of the fact that you're going to take a hit, then, your mind is playing a different game with you.
Yeah.
It's that mind body experience where there's two different platforms and at times they clash, right? Like, my mind's telling me yes, my body's telling me no.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to bring up the I'm not trying to bring up the
song. Yeah.
But in reality though, like my mind's telling me like go, go, go. And my body's like, yo, you need to pay attention to me because your mind's a little ahead of itself right now. Like you need time to heal and talking to the body. It's that whole process.
Yeah. Or just the idea that like, your mind probably has the best intentions, but there's some level like it's like lying to you. A lot of times when we like live in our heads, we, like you said, are getting ahead of ourselves, which is something unique for, I think, human beings as like a species. We can even anticipate like the stress that we're going to feel versus like other animals that kind of just like in the moment they're stressed. They don't think about if they're ever going to be hunted again. When they know it happens, they kind of just react.
Right.
But for us, we have to kind of work on that. Yeah, going back, pain plus resistance. So it's that resistance that leads to like suffering or makes things worse. If you think about, well, not really so much now, but if you think about like traffic before, if you recognize like your commute is going to involve traffic, you can kind of like plan for it. It's like, okay, well then now I'll listen to a podcast or I'll actually listen to that music or that new album that I've been like not been able to like really listen to. If you can kind of like frame it, it's like, okay, well, how can you turn this into like an opportunity for yourself? You kind of lose that resistance to being stuck in traffic.
Yeah, and just complaining about it and hating the 30 to an hour drive. And you're like, this usually takes me 15 minutes. But having intention and adding value and meaningfulness with, like you said, listening to a podcast or whatever it is, that'll give it a different light.
Yeah, or even, and then connecting this to the other example earlier of focusing on what's inside and outside your control. You have no control over how fast this traffic will kind of pass or how soon you really get to your place. But you have control of like how you use your time while you're in traffic,
right?
Or your outlook to it. So yeah, kind of closing the loop there.
Nice. Well, CV, you and I have these talks all the time when we go cycling. So it's always uplifting when we're able to just bounce off ideas and, your world introducing into mine, vice versa. I just really appreciate you for taking the time to jump in and share a little bit about your expertise and better ways for us to manage anxiety and stress. I want to open it up to you. Any social plugs where our listeners or our watchers on YouTube can find you?
I don't have very many, but I think as soon as I get licensed, I'll probably be out there more. But I mean, just my personal account on Instagram, codename CV, all spelled as it sounds. Thank you for having me. Thank you for bringing up these topics as well. I feel like it's a conversation that we need to have more, especially as you mentioned, we kind of grew up thinking those feelings are bad and we just want to get rid of them rather than let's manage them, address them, and acknowledge them that something's happening.
or talk about it.
Yeah.
We're not talking about it. So it just balls up inside. And I feel like listening to this type of content or even going elsewhere to really listen to people talk about it and that are going through it will help us out. Thank you, CV. I appreciate your time. I know we're going to be linking back soon. I'm going to heal up soon and we're going to be on the bikes in no time. To my guests, I want to say thank you so much for listening in. I appreciate you guys. If you guys are watching this on YouTube, please subscribe. Turn on that notification bell so that way you get updated every single time there's a new episode. And if you're listening to this on the podcast, go ahead and subscribe on there as well. And if you guys have any feedback or whatever it is, you can put a review on there and that'll be greatly appreciated. This is Making Moves and Mikey. I'm your host, Mikey Messina. Peace out. Peace out, CV.
Later, man.